There are moments in life when things fall apart in ways that make no sense. Doors close without explanation. People leave. Plans collapse at the exact moment you thought everything was finally aligning. Most people interpret these moments as failure, bad luck, or abandonment. Carl Jung saw something very different. He believed that what appears as chaos on the surface is often the psyche, and something far greater than the psyche, intervening for your survival and transformation. Jung understood that protection does not look like comfort. A higher power does not shield you from pain the way a parent shields a child from danger. It protects you the way fire hardens steel, by forcing confrontation, by removing illusions, by breaking patterns that would have destroyed you slowly if they had remained intact. The first sign that a higher power is protecting you is this. Your life is repeatedly interrupted at critical moments. You almost took that job, entered that relationship, moved to that place, said yes to that opportunity, and something stopped it. Sometimes violently, sometimes humiliatingly, sometimes through loss. At the time, it feels cruel, but Jung would say that the unconscious, aligned with what he called the self, the organizing principle of the psyche, intervenes when the ego is about to commit to a path that would fracture the soul. Protection often comes as obstruction. The ego wants what is familiar, what is socially rewarded, what feels safe in the short term, but the self sees further. It sees the future consequences your conscious mind cannot calculate, and when the misalignment becomes dangerous, life steps in. Jung called this compensation when the unconscious corrects the conscious attitude. Spiritually, many traditions would call this grace. Think carefully about your own life. How many times were you angry about a door that closed, only to later realize that walking through it would have cost you your integrity, your peace, or your destiny? If this resonates, pause for a moment and write in the comments this short phrase: I was protected, not rejected. Do not overthink it, just write it. There is power in naming the pattern once you see it. The second sign of protection is subtler and more disturbing. You are forced into periods of isolation, not chosen solitude, imposed solitude. Friends drift away. You feel misunderstood. Conversations feel shallow. You no longer fit comfortably into the spaces where you once belonged. Jung warned that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, almost always requires separation. The crowd cannot follow you into the depths, and the depths are exactly where protection operates. Isolation is not punishment. It is containment. When the psyche is undergoing transformation, it becomes vulnerable. Too much external noise can derail the process, so life reduces the noise. It removes distractions. It strips away false mirrors so that you are forced to encounter your own shadow, your own truth, and your own calling. Many people panic here. They assume something is wrong with them. Jung would say the opposite. Something is finally right. A higher power protects the seed by burying it in darkness before allowing it to break through the soil. If you are in such a season now, do not rush to escape it. Do not numb it. Do not betray it by forcing yourself back into spaces that no longer fit. Instead, acknowledge it, and if this speaks to you, comment this phrase below: Isolation is shaping me. Just those words, nothing more. The third sign is one that most people completely misunderstand. Your ego is repeatedly humbled. You are brought to your knees, not once but multiple times. Achievements don't satisfy you the way they used to. Recognition feels empty. External validation no longer fills the void. Jung believed that inflation of the ego is one of the greatest dangers to the soul. An inflated ego cuts itself off from the self, from meaning, and from the divine order. So protection comes as deflation. Life takes away the masks you hide behind. It exposes your limitations. It forces you to confront your dependency on approval, control, and certainty. This is not to destroy you. It is to return you to proportion. to reconnect you with humility, which in Jungian terms is not weakness, but alignment. A higher power cannot work through a rigid ego. It works through surrender, and surrender is learned through repeated humbling experiences that strip you of false authority so that true authority can emerge from within. If you've experienced this and it hurt more than you expected, comment this simple phrase: humility is my protection. Finally, the fourth sign, which we will explore deeply next, is the most paradoxical of all. You are guided by a quiet inner voice that contradicts logic but proves right over time. Jung called this intuition, but he understood it as something far deeper than instinct. It is the whisper of alignment, and it does not shout. In the next part, we will uncover how this inner guidance operates, why ignoring it leads to suffering, and how recognizing it changes everything. Until then, pay attention. Protection rarely feels gentle, but it is always precise. If this message found you at the right moment, stay with it, and write one of the phrases that spoke to you. You may be more protected than you realize. There is a reason why the most important guidance in your life rarely arrives as a loud command. It does not come with certainty. It does not come with proof. It comes as a quiet knowing, often inconvenient, often irrational, and almost always uncomfortable. Carl Jung believed this inner voice was not imagination. He saw it as a function of the self, the deeper center of the psyche that exists beyond ego, beyond fear, and beyond social conditioning. This brings us fully into the fourth sign of protection. You are guided by an inner voice that contradicts logic but proves right over time. Most people are trained to distrust this voice. Society rewards analysis, speed, and certainty. Intuition asks for patience, courage, and faith. Jung observed that people who ignore this inner guidance often experience recurring suffering, not because they are unlucky, but because they are misaligned. Protection speaks softly because it respects your freedom. A higher power does not control you. It invites you. And that invitation often comes as a feeling you cannot explain, a subtle resistance when something looks perfect on paper, or an unexpected pull toward a path that makes no sense to others. Think about how many times you knew something before you could explain it. You felt danger before it appeared. You sensed a lie before it was revealed. You hesitated before a decision that later proved harmful. This is not coincidence. Jung would say, this is the psyche communicating through symbols, emotions, and bodily sensations, a language older than logic. Ignoring this voice does not make it disappear. It grows louder through consequences. If this resonates, write this short phrase in the comments: I trust the quiet voice. Do not add explanations, just the phrase. Now here is something even more unsettling. When a higher power is protecting you, your suffering becomes meaningful instead of random. Pain no longer feels chaotic. It begins to repeat with patterns. The same themes show up again and again: abandonment, betrayal, loss, failure, reinvention. Jung called this the individuation pattern. Spiritually, it is the mark of someone being shaped, not punished. Random suffering destroys people. Meaningful suffering transforms them. You start noticing that every major wound pushes you toward deeper self-knowledge. Every collapse forces honesty. Every loss removes something false. This is not mercy in the human sense. It is precision. Protection does not stop pain. It ensures pain is not wasted. Many people miss this sign because they compare their lives to others. They see people who seem untouched, untested, comfortable. Jung warned that an untested life is often the most dangerous one because it breeds unconsciousness. Protection targets those who are capable of carrying awareness. If your life feels intense, concentrated, emotionally demanding, it may not be because you are broken. It may be because you are entrusted with depth. If this speaks to you, comment this phrase: my pain has purpose. Another overlooked sign of protection is this: You are repeatedly prevented from becoming who you are not. Opportunities fall apart when they would force you into a false identity. Success feels empty when it requires self-betrayal. You are blocked from paths that would earn admiration but cost authenticity. Jung believed neurosis often arises when a person lives a life that contradicts their true nature. Protection intervenes by making the false path unbearable. You try to conform and feel suffocated. You try to perform and feel hollow. You try to become what is expected, and something inside you rebels. This inner rebellion is not weakness. It is loyalty to the self. A higher power protects your essence even when your ego begs for approval. If you have ever felt unable to fake happiness, unable to tolerate a lie, unable to live a life that looks good but feels wrong, that is not failure. That is protection with teeth. If this resonates, write, "I refuse to betray myself." In the final part, we will uncover the last and most misunderstood sign of all, the sign that only appears when everything familiar collapses. It is the moment when protection feels like abandonment, silence, or absence, and yet it is the moment when transformation accelerates the most. Stay with this, and if one of these phrases touch something real in you, leave it below. What you name begins to lose its power over you and reveal its meaning instead. There is a point in every deeply transformative life where protection becomes almost indistinguishable from abandonment. Jung wrote extensively about this stage, though he rarely spoke of it in comforting language. He understood that when external structures collapse, identities, relationships, certainties, roles, something far older and more intelligent is preparing to emerge. This is the next sign of protection. Everything that once defined you begins to dissolve, not gradually, abruptly. You wake up one day and realize that the labels no longer fit. The ambitions that once drove you feel foreign. The beliefs you inherited no longer sustain you. Even your idea of who you are feels strangely hollow. Most people panic here. They rush to rebuild an identity as quickly as possible, even if it is false. Jung warned that this is the most dangerous mistake. When identity collapses, protection demands patience. A higher power does not rush reconstruction. It allows the void to exist long enough for truth to surface. This state, what Jung would associate with the nigredo, the blackening phase of transformation, feels empty, directionless, and deeply uncomfortable, but it is sacred, because only what is essential survives the void. If you are in a season where nothing feels solid, where answers refuse to arrive, where certainty evaporates the moment you reach for it, this is not abandonment. This is preparation. The ego is being softened so that something truer can take shape. Protection sometimes removes the map, so you learn to walk by inner alignment instead of external instruction. Another sign emerges here, one that few people talk about honestly. You become intolerant of superficiality. Small talk exhausts you. Performative optimism irritates you. False certainty feels violent to your nervous system. Jung believed that once the psyche has tasted depth, it cannot return to shallowness without suffering. Protection raises your threshold for truth. This is why you may feel increasingly out of place, not because you are superior, but because you are no longer asleep. A higher power protects you by sharpening discernment. It makes dishonesty feel heavy. It makes pretense feel suffocating. It makes distraction lose its flavor. What once entertained you no longer satisfies you because your inner life has expanded beyond it. Many people misinterpret this as depression or bitterness. Jung would say it is consciousness growing faster than the environment can accommodate. Protection isolates not to punish you, but to keep you from shrinking back into unconscious comfort. Then comes another unmistakable sign. You are repeatedly asked to choose integrity over ease. Life presents you with moments where the easy option is obvious and unbearable. You could compromise, stay silent, conform, settle. Nothing external stops you, but something internal refuses. Jung believed that this internal refusal is the self-asserting authority over the ego. This is where many people lose everything, socially, financially, emotionally, because they choose truth instead of safety. And yet this choice is never random. A higher power protects those who are willing to lose what is false in order to preserve what is real. The losses feel severe in the short term, but over time you realize that what was taken could never have supported the life you are meant to live. If you've been facing moments where doing the right thing cost you comfort, approval, or certainty, pause here. This is not a mistake. This is alignment being tested. And now, just once, if any part of this resonates deeply with you, write this short phrase in the comments. I choose truth over comfort. Nothing else. Just that. In the final part, we will bring all 4 signs together and reveal how protection ultimately reveals itself, not as control, not as rescue, but as liberation. We will also explore how recognizing these signs changes the way you move through uncertainty forever. Stay with this. The silence you are in may be doing more for you than noise ever could. There comes a moment when everything you have endured begins to rearrange itself into meaning, not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, with a sense of inner coherence that was missing before. Carl Jung believed that this moment marks the true revelation of protection, when life no longer feels random, even when it remains difficult. This is the final and most decisive sign. You begin to trust the process without needing guarantees. You still feel fear. You still face uncertainty. But something fundamental has shifted. You no longer panic when things fall apart. You no longer rush to force outcomes. You no longer beg life to explain itself. Jung saw this as alignment with the self, a state where the ego stops fighting reality and starts cooperating with it. Protection matures into partnership. At this stage, you realize something profound. The higher power that has been guiding your life was never separate from you. It spoke through your intuition. It shaped your character through loss. It refined your values through isolation. And it trained your discernment through repeated tests of integrity. What once felt like punishment now reveals itself as preparation. You see that every interruption prevented a deeper betrayal of self. Every collapse removed a false structure. Every period of silence strengthened your inner authority. Jung believed that when a person reaches this understanding, neurosis loosens its grip, not because life becomes easy, but because meaning replaces confusion. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this forming in me?" This shift changes everything. You become less reactive and more deliberate, less desperate and more discerning, less dependent on external validation and more anchored in inner truth. You no longer chase signs frantically because you recognize that your entire life has been one continuous conversation with something greater. Protection, in its final form, looks like freedom. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from unconsciousness. Not freedom from risk, but freedom from self-betrayal. Not freedom from uncertainty, but freedom from fear of it. And here is the paradox Jung understood deeply. Once you recognize protection, you no longer need to be protected in the same way. You have internalized the guidance. You have learned to listen. You have learned to wait. You have learned to choose truth even when it costs you. That is the moment the path opens, not because it is made safe, but because you are made ready. If this message reached you at a meaningful time, hold on to what resonated. Let it work quietly. You do not need to rush understanding. Protection unfolds at the pace your soul can integrate it. And remember this, the fact that you are still searching, still questioning, still refusing to live unconsciously, that alone may be the clearest sign that something greater has been guiding you all along.